Welcome to Crossing Bridges. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Curtis May, a dear friend and like a brother to me. I've known Curtis for many years. He's a man of peace and also director of reconciliation and mediation. He has been devoting his entire life to bringing people of all faith background together to live in peace and harmony. He has traveled not only throughout the United States, but in many countries throughout the world on the same basis of humanitarian ambassador of peace. He was born in Alabama, and after graduating from high school, he moved to Brooklyn, New York. And I'm not going to tell you the rest of it because I want Curtis to be able to share his journey with you. At this time, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome my dear friend and brother to this show, Curtis May. Curtis, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, you too, my brother.
I want the people today not only to learn more about Curtis May, but more importantly, what you have gone through and some of the setbacks you had in life that would otherwise transform people toward hate, prejudice, discrimination. But in your case, you transformed that in a positive way toward peace and harmony, love toward human beings, and you have been so successful. So let us go back to Alabama. Tell us a little bit about your family background and your journey to Brooklyn and then your path to California.
Thank you. I like to talk about Alabama because I was born there in 1944. And for anybody who is old enough to know that in 1944, things were pretty tough. It was very segregated, and I wanted to get out of there, but my folks insisted that I graduate and stay in Alabama, and then once I graduated, I would go on to family in New York. So I couldn't wait for that, and finally the year came. I was valedictorian of my class president, and I was looking forward to a scholarship to college, like the white schools, valedictorians. I got 0 in this all-black school.
Right.
So once I graduated, I took the first train that I could take from Birmingham to Times Square. Once I got there, I was like a bird just born, fish out of water, because it was such an impressive, powerful, and big town, big city. And took the subway to an uncle's house, he and his wife, and finally stayed for a while with my aunt. And eventually, I wanted to know where was the closest church, because I was going to the church back there in the Baptist church. And I was pointed toward a big, diverse church in Manhattan, New York. Very diverse, 1,500 people. So I took the subway, got off and walked to the door, knocked on the door. There was an usher, Roman Pickett, and a beautiful young lady named Janice, who turned out to be my wife. I met her at the door. I thought, I think this is a pretty cool church. I think I'll stay. And so I saw all those 1,500 people hugging each other, blacks, Hispanics, whites, Asians, people that I'd never seen before, their ethnic group. And I was startled. I just stood there and looked. And eventually, I began to go to socials with them, listening to sermons and all of that. We formed a youth club where we learned to get to know each other, blacks, whites, everybody to know each other. And during that journey, I learned that everybody is the same. I couldn't believe it. It was very difficult for me to touch a white person, especially a white woman, because I've heard there had been lynchings.
Right.
And so white women would come up and hug me and say, "You're my brother." And I was a little uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
However, that soon subsided. And eventually, I went on to Ambassador College in California. And at the end of my college career, I focused on theology. And at the end of that, I took more classes, Azusa Pacific eventually, and finally was sent out into the ministry, pastoral ministry. In pastoral ministry, I found all of us working together. We have many churches throughout the U.S. and internationally as a fellowship. Then I was asked to go overseas with my family during festival days. Ended up in South Africa and spoke in Soweto and saw Mandela where he was in prison, Robben Island.
Right.
And he was about to come out. And that was the most exciting thing, to see that he had been such a gentleman in prison. In fact, he was on house arrest, and he was in his yard as we passed by.
Right.
And but he couldn't go anywhere until finally he was released.
Right.
What was so powerful to me, and I think it helped my ministry, helped me to know anybody can change. When President de Klerk decided I think it's time for a black leader. He called Mandela onto the stage, and they talked, and he said, this man is ready to be president of South Africa, first black president.
Right.
Some protested and some agreed. And so finally, this Springbok team, soccer team, they were playing their biggest rival. I forgot.
Rugby.
Rugby,
Right.
sorry, rugby,
Right.
that's right. And he was on the front row, Mandela. And some of the whites were not too sure about him, but once he showed that he believed in that team, they gave him a hat.
That's right.
And they won. And they were so excited. They accepted him. He went onto the stage and really applauded
Yeah,
him.
you're right, because that rugby game really
Yes.
transformed Mandela as a hero among all the people, and they accepted him. And it's amazing what God has planned for us. There are moments in our lives that it makes a big change and impact, like you met your lovely bride, Janice,
Yes.
over 47 years ago.
Yes.
And here you're together. You have two beautiful children. You have Angela, who's a CPA
Yes.
and real estate broker.
Yes.
You have Bradley, who's a police officer.
And a corporal.
Corporal in Pasadena
Yes.
Police Department. They have two beautiful children.
Yes.
So it's a marvelous thing, because the impact of those people showing love,
Yes.
affection to you,
Yes,
change your way
it did.
to what you have become. And that is really a God's blessing. That's a journey that we all have for us.
Yes.
The one thing about you, Curtis, that I have known, you took it and accepted it and believed in it.
Yes.
And as a result, you carried that mission for the rest of your life to show that love,
Yes.
that peace, harmony, unity to everyone else.
Yes.
And then since you and I have met, as I had said at the inception of the show, I love you like a brother, and we are like brothers.
Yes.
And we've both been working on the same path. Now, two things happened to you on your way to California. One from Alabama,
Yeah.
one from Arizona.
Right.
And it's important to talk about those two incidents, if you'd be so kind.
Yes. Yes. Now, in Alabama, you're talking about the dogs on the people and all of those things in
Yes.
Birmingham.
Yes.
In Birmingham, Alabama, I could not believe that the police would put dogs on people and would let them bite children. One little child was in prison. He was 5 years old. Dick Gregory flew in, former comedian.
I remember that,
Flew in, and he was arrested. He was in the cell with his 5-year-old at 2 a.m. He asked the young 2 a.m. Black kid, "What are you doing in jail?" He said, "Tatum." He said, "Tatum." He was trying to say freedom, his freedom.
Right.
And so knowing that I could not go to school there to get higher education, our books were about 4 years old, used by the white students before they came to our school. This is how far they were keeping us behind. So I took a train into Manhattan, and that's how I got there, and that's why. And so you were asking about California.
California. When you left Arizona to come to California, you were stopped by police officers.
I was stopped by a police officer,
Right.
and I tell you, police officer, 2 cars came up. I call them Starsky and Hutch. They came screeching in. One blocked me, and one went on my side. Now, I had been visiting a young Hispanic man, and in a shelter. We had finished talking. He was on his way back to the shelter, and I was sitting there rejoicing over the fact that this young man was going to be coming to church. He was going to give himself an opportunity to have a great life, and I was so happy about that. So I was sitting there just rejoicing and thanking God. Suddenly, here are police cars flashing their lights. One skidded across my car. One skidded on the side. They jumped out with their guns at my forehead. And they were going back and forth, and I knew this was serious, so I raised my hands. And they asked, "Get out of the car." So I got out of the car, kicked the door open, got out of the car. "Get around the trunk and spray them." So I sprayed them across the trunk. And they asked, "Whose car is this?" And I said, "It's my car." They checked with the DMV. Sure enough, it was my car. Then he asked, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I told the story about the young Hispanic man I'd invited to church. "Well, can you prove that? Do you have a Bible?" Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, do they ask people that? Do they have a Bible? So I said, "Sure." Now I have to reach into my computer bag with a gun at the back of my head and pull out my Bible out of my computer bag. I thought for sure I was going to be shot. I kept praying all the way. Held it up. "Okay, do you have an ordination certificate?" "Yes, I do. Here it is." "Do you have a license to be a pastor? Yes, I do. Here it is. I'm thinking, how often do they ask people these things? But I wasn't in charge. So after they saw all of this, they cleared with the DMV. The car was not stolen, as they were told by a white person. I looked up in the window, and he said, "This is the home that called." Instead, that you, this black man, driving this green car, had a gun. And you fired off 4 rounds. We were coming to kill you. I said, "Thank God you didn't." And I said, it was a scary moment.
And that's again, when you talk about our journey of life,
Yes.
maybe somehow God was getting you ready
Yes,
to overcome what otherwise other people would not have.
that's right.
With an incident like that, when you have so much fear, because people don't realize
Right.
what it is, they only hear your story.
Yes.
But it's a different story when you are in that position, someone put a gun to your head, you instantly think, God, here's my last moment on this earth.
Yes.
They might pull the trigger,
Right.
and nobody would have known, nobody was
Right.
going to defend you.
Sure.
But you transform that and change that to peace,
Yes.
harmony. Your son, with God's blessings, is a corporal in Pasadena Police Department.
Yes.
Highly respected. So who would think basically someone who had been stopped coming to California would tell his son, pursue police line of duty?
Yes, yes. At first, I was reluctant, but he was so focused on becoming a policeman. He got his idea from the A-Team. Remember the A-Team?
Yes, of course.
And he enjoyed that program, and he said, "I want to do that." So I want to go to the academy. I said, well, Brad, wouldn't you like to do something more peaceful? He said, "Oh, Dad, I really want to be a police officer." So I go say, pursue it. Went to PCC, got his 2-year degree, went on to the academy, graduated, became an officer, and a well-liked officer.
Very well liked.
He's a big guy. He's bigger than I am. He's about 6 feet tall, 225 pounds. If he sees a woman walking across the street with her bags, he goes and helps her. He's that kind of person. And so I thought, you're going to be too gentle to be a police officer. But believe me, I've seen him in action.
Yes.
He's not too gentle.
No, I've seen him too. I've had pleasure of collaborating with him.
Yes.
He is really a true gentleman, a
Yes.
true officer,
Yes.
and serves the community with honor.
Yes, and I had the honor of telling my story to the Pasadena Police Department
Yes.
under Chief Malekian.
Right.
And I don't know if you were there, but I was with a bunch of officers, and he asked me to give a lecture. And I was talking, and I told the story about those who pulled me over and all that. And I said, you know, it would have been nice for the police to have said, you know, sir, whoever called was wrong. We're sorry you had to go through this.
Right.
And one officer said, he had two bars, white officer. I don't think they should apologize for doing their job. Another white officer had 3 bars. He said, you're wrong, right in front of everybody. He corrected him. He said, look, this man is a person who pays a salary. He's a citizen of Pasadena. And so why shouldn't he apologize, you know, to the
Absolutely.
officer?
Right.
And so I really appreciated that. That told me a lot. I always have thought of that officer as being really a gentleman and the kind of person that he should be.
Right. Talking about giving lectures and seminars to police departments in the United States, but you also have traveled to many countries throughout the world.
Yes.
You were in London where an incident took place. It was a celebration. Can you expand on that if you'd be so kind? There was a celebration of something that happened in the past. They were honoring someone, and you were part of the march in London.
Oh yes, yes, yeah, and in London. But then this happened over in Ireland,
Right.
probably,
Right.
in Southern Ireland. No, Northern Ireland. A good friend of mine who was a chapter leader of ORM eventually. He and I were driving around. He was driving his BMW, and he was showing me all these signs, militant signs where you have people being bludgeoned. These are their billboard signs.
Right.
And so he took me down Shank Hill Road where all these signs were, and then finally we parked our car. We saw a Martin Luther King emblem there. And so we looked up at it, and then Jim looked back, my friend looked back, and he saw a carload of Irish young men, and they had a gun. And they were looking at us, and one pointed the gun toward us and said, "Hello, Malcolm," like Malcolm X. And I thought, oh, Jim. I started praying. Jim said, ease into the car. We eased into the car, and Jim pointed it and gunned it. I mean, we got out of there real fast with that BMW. And they didn't come after us. I thought they would, but that was a scary moment for me.
You also have been a co-author writing a book, Mending Broken Relationships.
Yes.
Can you expand on that, please?
Yes, I co-authored the book with Dr. John Paul Eddy, who was a white Texan, a professor at the University of North Texas. He saw me do a workshop. He said, "You should write a book." I said, "Well, I'm not a writer, Dr. Eddy." I said, "You are." He had written about 40 books. He said, "Well, look, it's easy." And so he started talking to me about it. We started discussing. I told him my life story and all that. Next thing I knew, there was a manuscript on my desk. He had written it and put it on my desk. And he said, "Now you take this and you put whatever you want into it and add yours to it." And finally, we have a book called Mending Broken Relationships. And it really is a fine book. It covers a lot of things about race in a very balanced way. And so yes, we have that book.
Your seminars, as we talked about, Curtis, has always been about mending problems.
Yes.
Broken
Relationships.
relationships, but also more importantly, how do you unify people in so many ways, depending who are you giving seminars and your lectures,
Yes.
whether police department, people in church,
Yes.
people overseas. What is your basic thinking of philosophy when you approach them? And what are you really trying to get across? I already know that, but I want for the viewing audience to hear from you directly.
Yes, I appreciate that. That's a good question. My focus is, look, we're all on this planet together. We're all one. We all came from one set of parents, Adam and Eve. No matter what we think about that, we all came from the same person. We're human beings. And therefore, we should see every human being on earth as a fellow human being. And we should think of them as somebody we should love and appreciate. It doesn't matter what ethnic group we are. We can give each other blood. You can do all kinds of things. It reminds me of Archie Bunker, one of the All in the Family episodes. I don't know if you remember this, but he was needing some blood transfusion. He had a black nurse. And she said, "Well, I can give you blood." He said, "I can't do that."
I remember that episode, I do.
She said, "Why not?" He says, "Well, you're black and I'm white." She said, "What difference? We both have red blood." And finally, she started to give him the blood. And he said, "Just one question. Am I going to turn black?"
I remember that.
You remember that?
I do.
And so it shows how ridiculous. And I love that series because
it was fun.
it said a lot about human nature. But I began to realize that I had been given so many opportunities. And as I asked white people what I'd have certain conferences, if they would join me with the Reconciliation Ministry. We have 24 chapters in 5 countries, including Ireland, Scotland, England, and Canada. And I would say probably 2/3 are white. Billy Graham's daughter-in-law is one of ours. And it's just a marvelous thing. When we come together, we're all one.
Absolutely.
And we model that, and we go out and we try to model it wherever we go and let people know that we don't need to be afraid of each other. I was reading, and a word came up the other day about, it's about ethnocentric. People are afraid of a different ethnic group. And they just walk around and think that we're different somehow.
Right.
And they try to marginalize you because you're different, but we're all the same.
I think what the problem is, Curtis, as we know each other for so many years, fear blinds you.
Yes.
Fear is like having a curtain in front of you. Sometimes it's a thin curtain you can see through, and some you make the curtain more darker.
Yes.
Because the way you were raised.
Right.
And that's why it's so imperative for parents, when they are raising the children, not to think of themselves so much.
Right.
Set aside their selfishness.
Yes.
Raise the children, as we talked about, that they are children of God. We are all born together in the same manner. God has created us on this planet to serve God and humanity.
That's right.
But unfortunately, a lot of parents tend to forget that.
Yes.
And they went through some hardships, some problems, and they never want to stop talking about it. And they want to keep the children on the same level of hate and prejudice. For example, what you went through in Arizona, some other person would have told their children, especially Bradley, hate the cops,
Yes.
hate this, hate the white people.
Right.
You never did that.
No.
You became just the opposite because you are a man of God. And what you say, it's you.
Yes.
It's not the lip service.
Right.
It's you. It's Curtis May. That's you.
Yes.
So when I talk about Curtis May behind you, I say the same thing. The man of God, the man of peace, the man of love.
Yes.
And the same thing what people need to get to know. Don't look at each other on the surface.
Right.
When you have reached the person on the inside, then you have become close to God.
That's true.
As we said, inside we all have similarities.
Right.
Same blood, heart, maybe different sizes, but same heart.
Yes.
Same veins, same everything
That's
almost.
right. That's right.
And let's transform that to the outside.
Right.
And you say, my God, we have all similarities.
Yes.
We're all the same. We're all
Yes.
people.
Right.
So what? If the color is different, so what?
Yeah.
If the hair, size,
Right.
who cares?
I know.
We're living on this planet for a short time.
Yes.
What better way to serve God and yourself and humanity but helping each other,
Yes.
guiding each other, but not so much for ourselves, but for our children and generations to come.
That's right.
We all want peace, but peace has eluded us because us, as the old fogies, if you want to call it,
Right.
never stop the old things.
Right.
It's okay to talk to children about slavery, about genocide, about Holocaust. Teach them what happened, but don't teach them hate.
Right.
Say what you need to learn, what we went through. We want you to feel the pain and suffering. You need now to work with peace and harmony with all your brothers and sisters
Yes.
to make the future a better for yourselves.
Yes.
And not for us,
Yes.
for yourself, your children, and That's how it starts.
That's right. Absolutely. That's how it starts, and that's the way it should be. I mean, we're all the same. And I tell you, you probably know Brad's wife is
Of
white.
course, of course.
And I've got two
Beautiful grandchildren. Absolutely.
And my in-laws, we go and flop down on each other's rug in the living room and just talk, and we're just one.
We have such a limited time on this planet.
I know.
We have known each other for almost 20 years.
Right.
And it seems like yesterday.
I know.
And
I
here
know.
we are, seriously, after 20 years.
Yes.
Well, we have kept a true brothership love for each other.
Yes.
And it's been joyful.
Yes.
And so many people can do the same thing.
That's right.
It's just like, what is it?
Yes.
When you say to yourself, for us, it's so simple. What is it? Why are you hating people?
know.
Why are you teaching prejudice? And all these things that are brewing in this world today, the future in some ways is not looking so bright
Right.
truly for our offsprings.
Right.
Unless we all come together and try to stop this misery of hate, violence, and this discrimination that's going on through the world all over
Yes,
now.
yes.
Because unless we come to terms, then we're going to have problems.
Right.
And I'm so blessed that I have a dear brother such as Curtis May that travels all over the world and truly, I want to say, preaches the reality of love
Yes.
and humanity. And God bless you for that,
Well,
Curtis.
thank you. And I tell you, I cannot think of a finer brother than you. I believe that if I were to knock on your door at 4 o'clock in the morning, you'd be right there if I have a need. I believe that.
My door is open for you and any other brother at any time.
Thank you. And I really know you mean that.
And I mean that from the bottom of you know that.
I know that. And so it's the way life ought to be with people.
It's
like
the
that.
fear. See, it's the fear.
Yes.
Even if you open the door,
Yes.
if you do not show fear,
Right.
and you respect the person on the other side,
Right.
they appreciate it.
Yes.
They perceive it.
Right.
Fear creates fear.
That's right.
Violence creates violence.
Yes.
Whereas peace brings peace.
That's right.
And those are the things we need to think about
Right.
because what God has given you, Curtis, you are a whole person. That's what makes you a solid person. You love yourself with honor and respect.
Right.
Not in a conceited way.
Right.
So you know yourself. God is in you.
Right.
God is in me.
Yes.
We all have part of God.
Right.
So you know that God has given you the strength, the determination,
Yes.
the fortitude to go forth.
Right.
And that's what you are. That's when people come across you. It's just like, oh my God, I just met a beautiful angel.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And that's why you've been so successful.
Yes, you know, one of the scriptures that you read about a lot is fear not. Fear not.
Fear not.
Fear not. And
That's right.
like you said, we fear each other. We fear the unknown.
And that's what stops a lot of people
Yeah.
to move forth in life.
Yes.
Fear.
Right.
I cannot do this. Rather than say, I can do this.
Yes.
I will do that.
Right.
I will face the challenges. So what? You fail, get up and do it again.
That's right.
Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, yeah.
How many
He
times?
failed many, many
I think
times.
21 times he failed.
something like that.
Became one of the best presidents in our country.
Absolutely.
Now, you are leaving after this show on another journey. Can you expand about maybe 30 seconds or so?
Yes, I'm going to St. Louis, Missouri. I'm going to be meeting with some staff there. These are business people. They're sending some of their representatives, and some of them are coming themselves. Police officers are planning on being there. We're going to be talking about racial reconciliation there. And then another venue, a chief plans to have as many chiefs as he can in a roundtable discussion on the police and the community. This is again in St. Louis, right near Florissant, where I've been, and Ferguson. But Ferguson is not participating.
I see.
But at the same time, I'm so happy that I can speak to some of the chiefs in St. Louis and Florissant that come out.
You have newsletters that go out to people who are on your mailing list.
Yes.
And it'd be wonderful for the viewing audience, if you'd be so kind, to tell them where they can write to in order to receive your mail on a regular basis, to know what is going on regarding your ministry, if you'd be so kind.
Okay, you could write to myself directly, curtis.may@gci.org, or look at A Time to Reconcile on the website, and there's a PayPal.
Okay.
atimetoreconcile.org, and
Okay.
you'll see a lot of the things that we have products. We have a book, we have a newsletter, we have a disc on reconciliation. We have a
Would you repeat that website again one more time, please?
atimetoreconcile.org.
Okay, a time to reconcile.org.
Yes.
And I really recommend to the viewing audience, if you'd be so kind, go on that website. You will be amazed as to what the reconciliation ministry is doing and what Curtis May is doing when he travels all over the world and gives you the insight as to what took place. Curtis, it's been a pleasure to have you, my dear brother. I love you. Have a safe journey with God's blessing with you and Janice together, and we cross paths again soon.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure for me as well.
My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, you have an opportunity to hear my dear brother expand what a man of peace is really all about. And I truly hope you have learned something from this interview to say to yourself that you can also become a person of peace. And if you have fear, set it aside. If you have, God forbid, prejudice, discrimination, hate in your heart, get it out. Start fresh. This is the beginning of your life. This is the beginning of a future for brightness for you, your children. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless all of you, and I appreciate you.